going there, Tammy?
They were good.
All right, good. Welcome to the October meeting of the Parks and Recreation Board. Could do our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's very nice to see everybody. It's been a long time since we met. Since June. Because July we didn't have a quorum, and September we didn't have a quorum, I think. So thank you everybody for showing up, and I'd like to welcome Sarah Dunn, who's our new board member representing the school board. Thank you for joining us. Looking forward to having you. Good year. Andrew, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Okay, in your package you should have a copy of the minutes from the June 13th meeting. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to review them or not, but is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Hi, John. All right. I think what we're going to do, because I have a amendment that I've got to jump to, is I think we're going to jump into new business. And Tammy was very kind to suggest that, so we can get through some of the meat of the meeting, and then she's going to do her update towards the back ends of the meeting. Tammy, that's still okay from your standpoint?
That works, yes.
Okay, great. So the first item of new business on your form is Peter Sampson Memorial Recognition discussion. As I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, heard, Peter, who was a Radnor icon in many ways, not just in the lacrosse world, had a very unfortunate accident this summer at a summer home, and passed away. I guess it was late July time frame.
It was August 16th.
It was August 16th, okay. It wasn't late July. I was trying to time it when I was away this summer, but August 16th. And you know, Tammy and I had a quick discussion about Peter, and Tammy had years of interaction with him through our youth lacrosse, etc. As you know, the K. Sampson Lacrosse Festival is probably the biggest one-day lacrosse festival in the country for high school teams. Been going on for 20 years now, I believe, and a lot of people, including the person to my right, put a lot of time and effort into that festival these years, and I'm sure hopefully will continue. But we just thought it would be good to have some conversation here about a way to possibly recognize Peter, but at the same time trying to make sure that we coordinate with the school board, because we don't certainly want to step on any toes of the school district and what they may or may not want to do, or having conversation about doing. Number one. Number two, obviously we would want to have any conversations with his family before making any kind of recommendations, etc. But I just wanted, Tammy and I thought it was appropriate to get it at the top of our agenda to maybe get some feedback if the school board members have any knowledge of conversation on the school board side with regard to recognition. That might help us as we have our discussions, etc. So, you know, I'll kind of open up there, and Andrew or Sarah, if you have any thoughts or comments on what you guys have seen or heard on your end, that would be great.
Sure. The short answer is no. We haven't heard anything, but that is something that is on our radar. It's been in some discussions here and there, but do you know that?
It hasn't. Probably just more because we have a lot of other things going on. I know we all know we've talked about Peter's passing. I don't think no one's brought it to the board, at least. It may be that the administration is talking about it, so I can certainly, I sit on the facilities committee, so I'm happy to ask specifically from a facility standpoint if anybody's been talking about it.
That would be great. It would be great if you wouldn't mind asking, finding out if there's any conversation there. We certainly would be happy to coordinate. Tammy and I spoke about, we have parks that are already named. Obviously, not all of our parks are named. Given Peter's application with lacrosse, a field is probably a field with a park or within a park. It probably makes the most sense. Tammy, one of your thoughts have been Memorial Field over by Radnor Elementary School. But I just wanted to open it up and see if anybody else has any thoughts or comments or suggestions about the best way to move forward with this, and does it make sense to have one or two people from our board be the leaders of this so that we can communicate with the school board, make sure everybody's on the same page, and at the appropriate time, and when we get some direction, maybe have some conversation with the family. But I want to be sensitive to the fact that it hasn't been that long yet as well. So I'm just going to open it up and see if anybody has any thoughts or
Did he
comments.
coach the high school teams? I don't know the background.
Last year.
Last,
He was an
year.
assistant.
He was an assistant coach last
Okay.
year, I think for the first time at the
Okay.
high school level. His son's the head coach at Conestoga, still, I believe, not anymore. Okay, he was head coach at Conestoga for a number of years.
So, and he had volunteered for the high school infrastructure project that we're working on. He had volunteered as one of the citizen members of the committee to look at that and meet with architects and go through drawings and things like that. So he's been active in the community there too.
Chris, were you on the Parks Board when Memorial Field was named?
I was not.
Because my memory of it's a little vague. I think John Fisher may have been the chair at the time. But that was an outgrowth of, we had some young athletes who had died, and we were looking for a way to celebrate that. And the thought was that Memorial Field would have that name, but it would be dedicated individuals like Jack, what's his name? Brennan. People who dedicated themselves to Radnor.
Right.
And Peter was, a fabulous example of that.
Yeah, I guess that'd be good to look up the history of that to see where that name came from and the specifics of that.
The name came from I had looked at it. It basically was to honor like young people who've played sports, young athletes, just in general. It wasn't to anyone specific that have become deceased, during their young lives, to celebrate them. But there was never any specific person behind that. So I know that there is legislation that named that park when that park was officially opened and named, but there was never any specific person behind that. So it was always just kind of open and vague, at least in my opinion, during my tenure. My suggestion for Peter was just that, Peter was also very instrumental in the transition of the field to a turf field, along with our project with Agnes Irwin and the lights, which, as I know many of you are aware, was a very long process. And he was a very level-headed person that was part of that process and helped get that done.
And he used it constantly.
He did.
Yeah.
He did. And it wasn't even lined for boys lacrosse. They had to paint the lines in because it just wasn't one of the schematics that was included on that. And I just know he was very enthusiastic about that field. So that was just one of the suggestions. I know one of the things I heard was that Enki turf field was being evaluated at Radnor High School as potentially being one of the locations. I'm not sure exactly who's taking that on or who's advocating that, but that was something that I had heard that was a discussion that was being out there.
Yeah, and Enki's already named for someone. It was a former high school teacher, wasn't it, or coach?
Yeah.
Ethel
So,
Enki.
Yeah.
And I think the thought was that something else was named after her, so to rename the field
Right.
would be something
Yeah.
that would be a possibility
Yeah, she was
because
a
he also
secretary.
used the high school field
Township
a
secretary.
lot as well.
Wasn't she Township secretary?
I believe she was the athletic director of the high school for many, many years.
Yeah.
She was responsible for a lot of programs and the genesis of things that have happened. I think
Yeah,
she
she
was
and
involved
Dick
in Radnor
Moore.
Day Camp a long time ago too.
Yeah.
So the rumor that Enki is different than this Enki is not true? That this Enki
Not that
is-
I'm aware of.
Okay, because every once in a while when you work with the high school teams, they say, oh, that's spelled differently.
Right.
This-
I just know people get confused about which Enki you're talking
Yeah.
about, so it could be a way to sort of stop that. But, obviously there's a lot of people with a lot of thoughts. So I think something for Peter is definitely worthwhile. He's definitely one of the most remarkable people in the community. I know that I've worked with. I was devastated when I heard about it.
I think the thoughts have been expressed are probably the first step, and that is to coordinate. There are a number of folks that would probably want to honor. One one group at least to add on to that, it would be Radnor Youth Lacrosse. And the group he founded, and I'm sure that group would want to do something to salute him, and whether they wanted to be a part of that or have
Right.
input on that.
I think they were the ones that were
Okay.
discussing. I don't know if it's been more. It doesn't sound like it's been anything that's been formally brought to the school. Maybe it's been something that's been brought to Mike Friel.
Yes.
But I think they were looking at the Enki turf field option.
Can I add?
Please.
So I have the unbelievable privilege of overlapping with Peter in so many things. He lives on my street, so that's the first. We're neighbors. I've worked with Katie Sampson Foundation since 2004, and I was the Radnor Boys Lacrosse Booster Club president for 2 years last year. So he coached Teddy in 8th grade and in the senior year. So yes, there is unbelievable amount of conversation. John Beezer has been talking quite a bit with Jack Brennan on ways and the facilities. So with this in mind for new business, I went ahead and called Sue Addis, who is on the facilities committee, and just said, this is coming to Parks and Rec, and I know school board is going to have it. So one thing that we talked about, which is what everybody just said, is there's lots of different parties who want to honor him, is that we work together. So I think your suggestion is brilliant, to, make whatever, who's ever working on this, Parks and Rec, Youth Lacrosse, high school, school board, that we kind of come to consensus, and that, yes, that perhaps maybe around Enki, it would be Enki Field, the turf field, which, by the way, he couldn't stand that turf field because of the way the turf field at the high school,
Yeah.
because of the way the stands are, and that at one point they talked about having his service at the turf field, and his kids said, Katie said, he hated that field. So, yes, all of these things, I think there's been a lot of support all the way around the township and district to do something, and that's all I have to offer.
Great, thank you.
Well, his finest hour, for my opinion, was when Katie had her accident. Is everybody here familiar with what happened with that? I mean, he could have gone nuts and been suing everybody on the face of the earth, and instead he turned the whole thing positive. And of course it helped that she was such a positive person, still is. Incredibly young lady.
So does it make sense for us to maybe select 2 folks from our board to represent this board as almost a subcommittee to try and reach out to the high school, et cetera? Is 2 the right number? Does anybody have other suggestions or thoughts that they'd like to offer with regard to that?
Sounds right.
If not, does anybody definitely want to be on that or would like to volunteer for it? I'm
Too
I
close for
volunteer
you?
to
No, I would
Ma'am,
love to be on
certainly
it, but
I
I
think we
wouldn't
defer.
want to take it from somebody who felt.
No, I think you can bring so much to it that,
Absolutely.
a lot of us would like to be able to bring to it, but you can't.
Absolutely.
And I'd certainly be happy to be involved with you as well to work that, unless, if I'm not stepping anybody else.
I didn't know Peter at all. I'm very unfamiliar with this, it's the other side of the sports world for me.
Yeah, I didn't know him as well as my daughter did, and I had a lot of tears in my hands, because she was involved with your foundation for the last couple of years. So if I'm not stepping on anybody else's toes that wants to jump in, and Claire and I take on responsibility to represent this board and try and initiate some conversations and meetings, et cetera, and bring back information to all of you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I think it sounds like a great idea.
I don't think
Thank
we need any kind of motion for that, to just know how we're gonna do that. Does that work, Claire?
Unanimous consent,
Yes.
definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that, both of you.
Mhm. Great. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate that. Item B on our new business list is the renaming of Veterans Park to Heroes and Legends Park. Tammy, maybe you could give us some background on that, because that's fairly recent. As in this week, I think that popped up.
Yes. So a little bit of background. The park that we're referring to is St. David's Community Park, which you guys all probably remember back in 2001 was the Hugler property that the township had acquired. It's right along Lancaster Avenue, off of Midland. A very nice little park that's brought a lot to the neighbors in that area. We had a group of veterans, specifically with the American Legion, right across the street, who had interest in potentially utilizing that park as a celebration point for veterans. So in 2013, we had a lot of meetings. We talked about the park as a celebratory space for veterans space, and we renamed the park Veterans Park. So a lot of people still know it as both names. Some people aren't still aware that it's Veterans Park. And we developed a plan that was included a Veterans Memorial Plaza, new playground, and some other memorial type features that would be developed in the park. There's actually a project page out on our park project website that talks a little bit about it, and that was a long time ago. So this wasn't a project that the Township was going to directly fund with capital dollars or bond dollars. This was something that we're taking on in a fundraising effort. So that's something that I know our Township manager had been working on for the last several years. The great news is that we do have some funding. Penn Medicine is stepping up to make a six-figure contribution, which is great. We also have some folks in the community, specifically Marty Costello. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of Marty. He's active at the American Legion, and he's owner of Joe's Place right on Lancaster Avenue. He is interested in renaming the park to Heroes and Legends Park, just to sort of expand the ability to memorialize not only veterans, but police officers, firefighters, and the like. So I know he's had some discussions with folks at the American Legion. They're all supportive, so I don't think we would expect any backlash in that regard to transition the name yet again to Heroes and Legends Park. So if this board is interested and supportive of that, that would be great. I think our Township manager would like to get it on the agenda for the Board of Commissioners at their 21st meeting, October 21st meeting, so that they can evaluate it and approve it, and then start to move forward hopefully soon in compiling the sponsorships that are there to try and get some change done within the park and highlight some of the features that we're trying to bring to life there.
Is there any idea of, beyond just naming it Heroes and Legends, of actually trying to recognize some Heroes and Legends, or actually using it in a way that, maybe once a year honors somebody, or we have a plaque and we periodically add to it, or is it just a question of naming it that and not really
it has been
doing anything that sort of furthers that?
I think the goal is, well, first of all, it was the site of our 9/11 ceremony for the anniversary that we had recently there. So it was a very major event that had taken place there. So I think that's something that we would continue to try and do. In addition to that, I know that there are some specific memorials that I know Bob has talked about potentially putting within the park to celebrate, just in general, like a general memorial of folks associated with some of the different branches of the military and the war. But I think that the idea is that the plaza could be that space where it would allow that ability to recognize specific people as those ideas and thoughts come forward. I know there was discussion about paver program way back when we had the discussions with the American Legion, so I think that's something that's a thought there as well, to where there could be more specifics, individuals that could be honored as part of the project. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sorry, maybe I missed it, or it's just history I don't have. When it was originally named Veterans Park, was there money given by the American Legion?
No.
Nobody? So it wasn't
No.
as if we're just...
There was a commitment by them
Okay.
that if changes are made, they would lead the effort to fund it.
For the
Okay.
papers,
Okay.
or some other type of block.
Okay, and we
feature
have
that
some
people
kind of,
could buy.
I don't have a problem at all to expanding it to Heroes and Legends, but I'm very sensitive to not having anyone feel that we're dishonoring veterans by changing the name or expanding it. So we're sure we've asked them in a formal enough way that the American Legion isn't going to be offended by that.
Yeah, Marty's I'm not sure exactly what his current role is within the Legion, but I know.
Well, he's not in that post anymore, he's
Right.
in the other wing post.
I agree
But
with
he's
Sarah.
also Delaware County.
I mean, I don't want it to be
think we
just
need to
casual
take this,
conversations.
Yeah, I'm certainly supportive of that idea. I think it's a great idea, but I want to make sure that we've done our due diligence on this, number one. if Marty says the American Legion Post doesn't have any problem, and I certainly trust Marty, but we should probably get a letter from the American Legion Post from the commander indicating such before
Sure.
we do anything, number one. Number two, we should probably consider, are there other veterans groups within Radnor Township
Yes.
that we
Yes.
should be identifying and making sure that we run it by them as well before, I mean, it's a great idea, but we have a tendency, all of us, to jump into things here in Radnor a little too quickly. So I just want to be cautious with that a little bit, and make sure that we've done our diligence on this before we would consider any kind of recommendation. Because this cropped up just Monday, I think I heard from you about this. And it certainly doesn't have to be jammed through for any reason. I'd also like to know, Tammy, why did Penn Medicine make a contribution where they pushed to do so? And how much was that donation specifically? And why was it put directly for that park?
Well, it was for memorial efforts. I know that was their support, so they knew what they were contributing to. I don't have the exact dollar amount. Again, this is information that the township manager had provided to me this week to bring before you. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here tonight to talk a little bit more about it. But my understanding is that when the discussion happened with Penn Medicine, they knew exactly what they were funding in terms of the park and the celebration piece to it. So, but I can definitely take your thoughts and recommendation back to him. I know I had asked the same question. I know he had assured me that the American Legion was supportive, and because I was fearful at first that they brought the effort to us as a veteran celebration, just wanting to make sure, and that assurance was given to me, so I can pass that along to him.
I just think it's important that we have full information before we're asked to make some kind of recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. So I'd like to see the letter a copy of the letter from Penn Medicine, as to how much they're giving, what it's for. I'd like to understand, are there other veterans groups? I'm not a veteran, so I don't know if there's other veterans groups within Radnor Township. Make sure that we're...
There are 2 American Legion posts.
Okay. So if we talk to both of them, we should ask for a letter from both posts that are in support of this idea.
So VFW?
No.
And is the name Heroes and Legends the greatest desire, or can it be
Veterans Heroes. and
Veterans
Legends.
Heroes, Veterans Legends?
Well, that,
You know,
you folks
the
are the ones that
incorporation
come up
of-
with
yeah,
things like
Of both, so nothing is lost in the sentence.
I'm not a huge fan of the legends. It connotes to me fictional characters and sports figures. Why not just Heroes Park? Or
The same for-
Veterans and
Veterans.
Heroes.
You know, what's a legend? I can think of something.
And I don't mean to get bogged down on but
Yeah.
I actually was kicking that around the house, and some neighbors, what do you think of this? And the instant reaction of the half dozen people I brought up was legends. And I had the same just reaction to it. Whether or not, I don't want to get caught up on
Yeah,
losing the bigger
absolutely.
picture on that, but why not just
I
Heroes?
think you're right. I mean, isn't this our
Museum.
museum here called Legends? What's the formal
Sports
name?
Legends.
Sports Legends of Delaware
So-
County.
Right.
So it's got a connotation already here in Radnor Township, so, I mean, these are good questions that we need to do some more legwork on, I think.
Another issue, don't want to get off track, but the next well-meaning group comes to us and wants to change something else in the name. Is there a procedure we have? Is there historically something that we do? Because I'm sure there are a million well-intentioned groups that might want to attach a different name to something, and hopefully we have a procedure
There is a
for it.
process, and
Okay.
there is a policy that brings it before this board. It's a park or recreation-related facility. I don't know that there's a method for other namings, throughout the township, but for parks and recreation facilities, it does come through this board, and then it's a recommendation that goes on to the township. But we have a very I don't want to call it a formal policy, but it's very specific
I've seen
and
it, yeah, because we
how-
had that when we were talking about,
yes.
with Lisa Bailey's family was asking about renaming something and, for her or whatever, so. I know
Yes.
within the last couple of years, we've seen that policy before
Yes.
here. So it probably wouldn't hurt, Tammy, would you be able to send all of us a copy of that policy so we understand it as well?
I
Yeah.
can.
Do we have an example of a naming that has changed in the last, in your tenure, Tammy?
O'Connor Park.
What was it?
O'Connor Park was South Devon Park.
South Devon.
Oh, now I know what we're talking about.
I still call it.
Got
I
it.
still call it something.
So do I.
South Devon
had no
South Devon
objection
1,
here,
South
too.
Devon 2. Yeah.
The other-
Yeah.
So, I can, and I'll I'll talk with the township manager and I'll circle back with you, because I think his understanding is that he was going to have it on the agenda for the board on the 21st, and I think Penn Medicine was perhaps going to come and give the township a check as well, so.
Wow.
So that was pretty far along.
Okay, well, I mean.
But regardless, it was to honor in the nature of the master plan that we approved on that.
Obviously, if the board of commissioners wants to do this, they're certainly welcome to do that. We don't have any input on that, so that's fine.
Absolutely. So I will circle back, but I'll definitely share the policy just so you all have it too, just as a refresher.
Great. Okay. Anybody else, comments or thoughts on this question? No? Okay. Thank you. Item C under new business is a review of the 2020 Township's capital budget with reference to the parks and facilities. Any discussion? So, Anna, can I ask you to introduce that for us?
Absolutely.
Please.
There's a copy that I provided you all with. It's an 11 by 17 large document. It's what I'm going to show you up on the screen as well. Just a little bit of history. This document is set up very similar to what we looked at the last few years. I've tried to keep it consistent for that purpose. By the way, we're preparing our township capital budget right now and our budget in general. So that's sort of what has brought us to this discussion. Usually I know we start this in September, but since we didn't meet last month, I don't think we're really behind it at this point. I think we're kind of right on target where we've been. I think we met and discussed it in September and October last year. So a little bit just about the information that's presented here. The top section where you see the purple highlight really outlines both of those are the bond projects that had been approved by the township. So the first section is the bond that the township borrowed back in 2015. It was late 2015. I think we really realized the money until 16. So those are a lot of projects that are underway or have been completed. And then the second section is the new bond, I'll call it, that was approved in just July of 2019 here, yeah. And fortunately, it was able to include 2 park projects in that, which was awesome, because the majority of the borrowing is for a lot of other township projects, which are mostly sewer related and have to do with other areas that are non-parks and recreation. So a couple of things about the park bond projects, if we just look up above, because I wanted to take it as an opportunity to just do a little bit of a recap on those projects as well. As you guys know, O'Connor Park, Warren Philippone Park is underway. It's been closed since July rather, for major comprehensive improvements that are going on there. And we'll take a look at those a little bit later. I do have a little bit of a visual recap on what's been going on there. So with a little bit of luck, within the next month and a half, those parks are going to reopen. They're going to look amazing. It's just a wonderful asset that is being improved for the long term, and a new recreational amenity within there with the pickleball court, as we had discussed at this board's level last July, I think, of 18. So it's exciting to know that it's almost completed.
So is that an indoor court? I'm sorry.
No, it's outdoor at O'Connor Park.
Okay.
Clemacrone, as you guys know, great park, was just really probably one of the most dynamic and comprehensive that we've done in a really long time, at least I know in my tenure here. Something that we're reaping a lot of benefits from now, which is completed. Great project.
If we could just blow our marine people out here, we'll be good.
And a lot of other townships.
Yeah, for sure.
Emlentonell Park, we have a comfort station that's under development there. We're in the process right now of getting that project out to bid. Enke Park, we had a lot of things that happened there with new bleachers and fencing. Those ones are completed. Fenimore Woods is another one that we've looked at closely in the last year and a half. That one is underway for potential bid within the next several months. I know I'm hoping by the end of the month to see a preliminary bid packet, and then we kind of go back and forth along a little bit throughout that process before we actually get it out to bid. But that's another one that's going to be materializing soon, which is huge.
Will that include repairs to that building that's falling down?
It will include demolition to it.
Oh, we're not going to try and save it.
No.
We'll let it go
Too
that
costly.
way. That's a shame.
Ivon Valley Park, We're looking at a couple things there. I know that we have some wall repair that's planned. We have new signage that's planned. We've been evaluating the feasibility of the bridge to cross over. We've actually determined that that's probably not the best approach. It would cross you into the park, basically, sort of down along like near where Clyde Road is, but we kind of figured that that really wasn't feasible as we kind of worked through that process and determined that we may actually just bring a trail in off of Clyde Road where the guardrail ends.
Mhm.
It's not the safest road there, but we've been working very closely with the Friends group. As a matter of fact, we just met recently at the park, walked the park, and started to evaluate the remaining things that we're going to try and accomplish within that. So stay tuned for more on that as we finalize exactly what we're going to be doing with the money there. Petrie Park, we had changes to the playground and new furnishings. That one was completed. The Radnor Trail is actually one where we were evaluating a comfort station, potentially at Brookside and Conestoga, which is really the only parking area. What we've actually determined on that's really not feasible for a number of different reasons. One is because the location of the sewer and the water is just very far away. The amount of money that was budgeted for that project, it would be probably double that to make that happen, believe it or not. So we had kind of looked at more of a glorified porta potty, like sort of like a more glorified like type bathroom with a vault, like a waterless system within it. So
Like that one.
continuing to look at that. A little different than Ditmar because of Ditmar works with the sunlight and everything.
Yeah.
So this would be more like a system that basically you'd have to bring a honey dipper into service on a weekly basis, but would look a little bit nicer than a porta potty. So we're still evaluating that though, in location and feasibility on whether or not we would be able to erect it at the site, because in and around that area there's a lot of pillars from the decking of the train station that used to be there, so it's proved to be a little bit more difficult than we originally set out. So we're looking at that one. The Skunk Hollow Bridge, the walking bridge there, had major repairs done. That one's completed. And then of course Warren Philippon, which is at the end of the list there. So we've got a lot of park projects there as part of that bond that were pretty significant. And was amazing, of course, that the commissioners vote to approve on that, because there's so many things that weren't done for many, many years, and we're getting a lot of great things done as a result of it. So moving on to the new bond that was recently authorized, Cowan Park and Odorosio Park will receive upgrades to their basketball courts, which are desperately needed at both of those sites. So we're in preliminary design on both of those right now and kind of working through that process. So that brings us to our capital budget, which, if you remember, last year we didn't have a capital budget. There was not one that was authorized by the commissioners, so I know a lot of folks tend to confuse that with the bond projects. They see a lot of work happening going on throughout the township at some of the parks, but it's separate. So I wanted to make sure that I kind of make that distinction as we look through it. So our capital plan has really been, over the last few years, we've kind of been pushing things out. We've had lists of things, and every year that we don't have a workable plan or items did not make it into the bond, we have that many more projects. And we do have a compounding problem that's happening. We have a lot of aging infrastructure throughout the parks, really from A to Z. I mean, the comfort stations at Odorosio, the playground at Cowan, a lot of benches that need to be repaired, areas that really should have ADA and greater accessibility, inclusivity, things of that manner. The Radnor Trail, the stone bed within the Radnor Trail needs serious repair. The trail itself down the road is going to need repair, although not eminent, but we see things at Ditmar Park, where the walking path there has some eminent repairs that need to happen. So there's a long list of things, parking lots, fencing, lots of things that we have to start to look at. So, rather than kind of ask the board, submit, these 5 projects and let's give them to the Board of Commissioners, I think the overall goal is we really just need to fund a plan, and we need to get support to fund a plan then we can decide what the priorities are. I think at that point, or if you have input tonight and you think, you know, these few projects, you know, if we can get these done, you know, we want to make sure that those are at the top of the list. But at the forefront, at the minimum, I think we definitely have to consider sort of the most eminent safety kind of elements and amenities, you know, where it's the most important. Like I think looking at things like the trail and repairs or other pieces of infrastructure with walking paths and parking lots are probably the biggest priorities. But then right in behind that, you know we do have comfort stations that do need to be repaired pretty significantly, like Odoriccio, and playgrounds like Cowan that are starting to fall in repair. And you could really add in Odoriccio and Beauconnor Park to those lists as well.
So Tammy, just to make sure I understand correctly, in the current year budget, there were no monies given to the parks and facilities, John, correct, for capital items?
There was a list of capital items, they were unfunded.
They were unfunded, correct. And can you give us some guidance from your thoughts? Do you see any change in the way the budgeting process? We have been through it. You've been through it for years and years now. Do you really see any hope of capital items being funded by the board this year?
The problem is there's so many needs, and the way Bob's doing it this year is we're going to get, like, here's the base, and then here's all these other things. And pick one from column A and one from column B. Sewers, infrastructure in general, are just gobbling it up. But it's important to still get the projects listed so we can put them in front of people.
Right.
And my sense is the current board is probably a little more open, to tax increases if necessary.
That's good feedback. So Tammy, I'm sorry to jump in there.
No, that's okay. So just a couple of things about the document itself. I mean, when you take a look at the dollar amounts, those are really just estimates. A lot of those dollar amounts really have to be looked at in a lot more detail. I'll just give you one example. I sitting there and thinking about, Odoriccio Park, for instance, and the comfort station. We know that that's one of the items that's appeared in our capital budget, which hasn't been funded for many, many years. We've had various dollar amounts in there, and part of it has been because, there's sort of a baseline replacement that we could do for that comfort station, but, I know that I've had conversations with members of the community, and they would like to see something nicer there. They'd like to see a pavilion. They think that's something that could be a benefit for that park and something that might be utilized by the community. So that's just one thought that I wouldn't get too hung up exactly on the numbers. I mean, obviously, once we make a formal presentation to the board, we're going to have to really try and drill into those. But I know it's always a living, breathing document. It really is. The capital budget itself is, in its totality, with all the projects of the township, it's just constantly, under evaluation, and projects are. So a lot of these are placeholders for the things that we know sit out there. Because if we don't look at them, we're not gonna really start thinking about them and thinking about how we're gonna fund them, and that's really important.
Tammy, who if anybody, is there any prioritization? Do we do it? Who does it? Should we come up with a proposed or recommended prioritization? What factors should we consider? Because I can think of a half dozen factors off the top of my head. How long have they been on the list? How much usership? Is it in an underserved neighborhood? Blah, 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 blah.
One of the things the board is doing right now, and Bill White's got the lead on this, is to develop a prioritization system. Things like public safety, outside funds available. So, for example, we've done some projects recently that everybody may not have agreed that they should be done, but 50% of the funding came from outside. So, we're trying to get that developed. In the 10 years I've been on the board, it's always been seat of the pants.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to, I'm not that I want to create extra work for us or anybody, but it seems like somebody with some sort of expertise ought to come up with some sort of prioritization with the factors and the weighting of those factors, clear and agreed on. I mean, this could go on forever, I know, so maybe but it seems funny not to have any prioritization there. It's sort of like just, throw
It's not
it.
just thrown there.
Well,
They're not
I'm
just
sure
thrown there.
somebody is
Yeah,
actually-
I mean, we actually sit and we have this dialogue every
Yeah.
day here in this building about the things that we know, like the trail. The stone replacement within the trail, the stone
Yeah,
the
yeah,
stone
it's one of my
area,
big projects, yeah.
it has significant tripping hazards. It has significant areas
And high
where it needs to
usage.
be. Exactly. So we definitely can do that. I mean, for the purpose of what I put together here is I just took, 2018 to 2023, and I just put them in a list because I want to at least look at
Because
them.
they were in
Yeah.
that document that showed it broken out by
Yes,
year, et
because,
cetera,
and
right?
part of the problem has been is the last few years, the list gets longer. And, some of the priority projects are more eminent. But
Does you and your staff feel that this is a pretty comprehensive list right now?
Yeah, so
It
that
is.
That is a simpler question.
it is.
So if it is, then is it possible to break this down a little bit? I mean, you have it alphabetically here, which is great.
Mhm.
But is it possible to break it down by, number one, what are safety issues in you and your staff and our Public Works Department's opinion? Number two, how long they've been on the list, as Mary said, which is important. And number three, get some kind of understanding of usage of these parks. Because I know there's a couple parks here that don't get a ton of use. And that's not to say that they're not important parks, but again, you want to put your get your best bang for your buck type of thing. So is it possible for you to do some work to help us with this list? So
Yeah, like I said, we, between Steve McNellis and Steve Norsini and I and Rick Foster, who's one of the new field leaders within parks, we've been spending a lot of time talking about parks and the priorities. We absolutely can. I think it's pretty easy for us to put together, with that, and then, we get into more of the things that are more cosmetic and, you also get in a situation with some of the playgrounds, just I'll throw those out for instance, like Odoriccio and Cowan and Beau Connor, they're 20, 23 years old at this point. So you also go into a situation where, right now they might look great today, but then something breaks on them, and then there's a part and there's a piece that we can't necessarily get because it was manufactured so long ago. So I think some of it would have to come with an asterisk that, there could be things that cause something that might be another year or two out that becomes more of a pressing item just for the simple fact of what could happen to it, or, some unexpected set of damages or issues that could happen.
And I do think another legitimate prioritization factor would be, aside from usage and stuff like that, is a more sensitive, underserved communities, or the appearance that all the funds and all the recreational opportunities go to the third ward, but none go to the seventh ward, or that type of thing. It may not be a high priority on some of the other factors, although it wouldn't be high enough. But that could also be an important thing that would put one project ahead of another because a certain community really hasn't been.
I agree.
served
And the
as well.
Clem McCrone work was all in Ward 7, so that was
Yeah,
very
I'm just
much
using that as an
appreciated.
example,
No, I
yeah,
know
yeah,
what
but
you're
I mean, but
saying.
for years, they did feel kind of like a step
Yeah,
Right,
so-
definitely.
well, and
Yeah,
that's
and
how-
even within a ward, I mean, certain neighborhoods
Right.
within wards.
Yeah,
so-
And that's how, right now, hearing from the residents, Cowan and Fenimore and Odoriccio
Yeah, yeah.
are all those kind of key
Yeah.
areas right now that feel like, there's some level of neglect that's there with
Yeah,
regards to
yeah.
the facilities.
I have a question that may be more for you, John, or it's maybe too philosophical for this group, but I guess some of these things to me don't seem like capital projects, but more things that should just be on a, every 5 years we know we have to repave this lot. This is the maintenance that gets, some of these feel like just standard maintenance items as opposed to capital projects. So I'm wondering why they have to be in a capital budget as part of kind of standard funding. So I used to work
Projects.
I actually used to work for a facilities company, and we actually had we had schedules for, every so many years, this is when we do the patching, and every November this gets checked. And it seems like a lot of this stuff, not all of it obviously, but certainly some of it, like parking lot repairs, and maybe it's just bigger than it looks like, or
It is.
resurfacing should just have been on a schedule, and it should get done.
It was never funded.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when things are never funded, they end up in one master list that looks like this. I
Okay.
mean, if you pull out the actual copy of the of the budget from last year, you'll
Right.
see that there's things that had been strategically listed in certain years because of exactly what you're saying. Now granted, some of those, there's new projects, there's things that we've conceived that maybe weren't on there that we realized that were issues,
Yeah.
that.
Also, some of it has to do with accounting rules.
No, yeah, I get that, but it just seems to me like some of this stuff should have been in our
Oh.
standard operating budget to
It's
do this
been on
every
the
year.
list for years.
But like when you look at like parking lot repairs, like they're serious sub-base repair at this
Right,
point. I mean,
because
those
it's,
are major.
but because it's
they're-
been gone so long. I mean, the
Yes.
problem is, we've created I wasn't part of it, but someone has created a
Right.
cost that's much higher than it needs to be because they didn't do the work
Right.
when it should have been done. Got
So
it.
generally, if you have an item that's, 20, 25-year lifeline item, obviously that's would fit within there. So when we look at fencing and benches and things like that, it definitely falls within that.
So I think part of this is really messaging to the commissioners too, though. It's making clear to them, like, look, these aren't, here are the nice to haves, like, a new sunshade. But if you don't
Right.
do the following, you're gonna cost us more money because it's gonna cost us that much more to do the work.
I'd like to also add to that thought, Sarah, is a line item for trees, more for communication than for what they cost us. I'm feeling when all the
Oh, it's down there.
It's down
Yeah.
there, yeah, at the very
Okay.
bottom.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, these are just, this is just
Oh, it
my-
is down there, great. So
my
Tammy,
full-
will you, because I know Shade Tree, I have the privilege of working on both of these boards, and for a reason, because I feel like Shade Tree, there's trees in parks. So, but the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing when it comes to trees in our parks. And I had a commissioner call me and said, did you know about the trees being taken down at O'Connor and Philpone? I didn't specifically know about that, but because those improvements were part of the big bond and the big picture, so that information is just really, would
Well,
be
the
nice to
commissioners
be.
approved that project, so they should have known that the trees were coming down.
Of course, so.
And I believe it was a unanimous vote.
I'm
Don't quote me on
sure
that,
it
but I'm
was,
pretty
and
sure it was.
I actually am
Could've been
not
6-1.
suggesting that, I'm not suggesting that there was a wrongdoing.
Sure, absolutely.
It's just that when a commissioner asks me, who sits on an advisory committee,
Sure.
and I don't have the information, that I just wanted to make sure, or if we could suggest, that this information be shared among boards, for sure,
Well,
especially.
Claire, the information's
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, just,
Absolutely.
okay.
Now, whether it's not necessarily spoon-fed,
Well,
but this, I mean, we knew when Tammy presented the program to you folks, the drawings had those trees identified. But
But they-
nobody said, oh, these are the trees that are coming in.
But that was to this board. It wasn't proposed to Shade Tree board, right? Because,
I thought Shade Tree was aware of the
I mean,
Tam-
Steve
Yeah.
Norsini, I believe,
Yeah, he
or
told us.
John Hosbeck had made them aware.
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, you
You're
work
just
here.
trying to make sure,
Well,
yeah.
you work here full-time. You guys, I know you know what you're doing, and we trust you, but as advisory boards, we were trying to keep the communication
Sure, well,
lines
commissioners play games
open.
sometimes too, I'm sorry, no offense, John, but I think in this case, like, I
That's
think,
exactly what
I think
it
the
was.
commissioner was probably aware of it.
Okay.
And I'm sorry if I'm out of line
Because-
for saying that,
No,
but.
No.
and that
I-
commissioner should have been sitting in one of these chairs.
Well, I
by the
sent
way.
him back. I said, we work for you. So I sent him back here to say, I'm sure that information is there. And just, it is more just for a general communication. That's all.
Absolutely.
You even door knocked over there.
We did, yeah, we went to, we visited the
Because we were
residents.
concerned that what had happened at McCrum was some people were very upset when trees were coming down. So we knew that, took additional steps over, across the street from the park.
And I, of course, assured any neighbors who asked me, the trees that all came down in
downtown.
No,
Yeah, this is,
Oh,
I know, I got a
God.
lot of questions on those too.
So,
Yeah.
understandably, so the township is supporting the Wayne Business Association. My own husband lives in my house, says, what happened to the trees? So that information
That
just.
information didn't get out very well too, because I was taking a walk out, why does this look like West Philly? Oh, it's the trees. And then our
West Philly.
contractor got jumped
Yeah,
on
they
by
don't
the.
like
So
South.
I'm just trying to facilitate
Sure.
that, and it's not just trees, any kind of thing that
Absolutely.
are happening in our parks that and you do such a good job, Tammy, keeping us informed of everything that's going
Yeah.
on. And I just think that communication really is key in getting these projects forward.
I honestly can say in the 20-plus years I've been involved with the township, communications is just like Mount Everest to try to climb. No matter how hard you try and you put articles in the newspaper and send out email blasts, so there's always some, I mean, remember when we tried to build volleyball courts at Odorecia? Literally, the bulldozers were there and the local commissioners showed up and stopped the project.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Obviously, I don't remember that, but.
No, yeah, that was 25 years ago.
Before my
You weren't even born
So,
then.
thank you.
Okay.
All right.
So I think it's important to have the dialogue, and it's good. I mean,
Yes.
we need to start having these conversations.
And I think it is, I think you're right, though, it is helpful, the trees especially, like, everybody kept asking me, because the middle school's right there, I'm like, I'm not responsible for those trees. And then, and then I saw a Radnor Patch article that explained it all, and I was like, oh, well, this, before the trees came down, would have been even more useful and helpful and educational. And you don't control when things go in the newspaper, but it is helpful.
Well, the good news is we now have a public information officer.
Yeah, that's great.
And she's been doing a lot more communication.
Good.
Well, and things just come down the pike, like the water management meeting on the 19th. That's today's, so I don't even heard about it. Jack Larkin sent out,
Yeah.
he's having a town hall, or commissioners are having a town hall.
No, it's Jack's having the town hall because that project's in his ward.
So again, brand new information. I mean, I knew that this was happening because of where we live, the Wawa, that's been in works for a long time. But I have a client who lives a riparian and
Mhm.
lives down the stream, and it directly affects her. And I said, here, go and find out what this. But did you guys know that? I don't know.
There's so much information. I mean, you think about our website. Our website does a great job of providing information, and these packets that come out. And there's so much information shared, but there are still gaps,
Right.
and it's awfully hard to close all those gaps, despite the best efforts of everybody. I mean, it's not too much in this township that goes on behind closed doors.
Nothing.
There's a few things I'm sure that go on behind closed doors, but not too much.
No, aren't we fortunate?
Yes, yes. So Tammy, what is the schedule for the staff and the Board of Commissioners with regard to the 2020 budget?
Well, I know that there are special meetings that are scheduled for the 28th, October 28th, and November 18th, which I had indicated on the second page of the agenda. So I know that on the 28th, the staff will be providing the board with a lot more information, of course on the operating, most likely as well as capital. So I think throughout those discussions, that's where we're going to learn, kind of what the board's appetite is for the capital budget and what they're going to be looking for. So, I think as that dialogue ensues, that's when we'll start to learn, what we think might be possible for parks in 2020.
Are you looking for anything specific from this board with regard to this process?
The only thing I would look for from this board is just to urge the Board of Commissioners to support park projects in some format to start funding a capital plan. To your point, Sarah, the capital plan of, various years and strategic planning
Yeah.
for replacements, improvements, addressing safety issues, those sorts of things.
So maybe what we could do is open any input and conversation about it, is look for this board at our November meeting to have a little bit more information about some of these priority, items we talked about, safety and how long on the lists, park usage, ward balancing, et cetera. If you're able to provide some of that detail, maybe we could, if we're comfortable when somebody proposes it, have a statement to make to the Board of Commissioners before the November 18th meeting to support what Tammy and her staff in Public Works is recommending with regard to parks, et cetera. If that sounds like it's okay with everybody here.
Chris, could you also take a look at your parks and see if something that we missed didn't get on the list?
Yeah, that was another question. Is this a list of all the facilities that the township's responsible for?
It's not, but we do have assigned park stewards. So each of you are assigned a cluster of parks, a group of parks. So
I know that.
that's
Add it to
something
your list.
that, yeah, we want to probably look
I
at.
think typically we know that the time that you give to this board is in addition to the time that you give to
Thank
your
you.
own board, et cetera. So I think Susan Michelson used to have a park assigned to her because she used to walk that park
was
every
Radnor
day.
Memorial.
Radnor Memorial.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna take a look at that list and I'll refresh it for everybody and send it out. Maybe I'll send it out to everybody, and if there's too many parks for you, or you'd like a different park, or you have some questions, or if there's a specific park that either one of you says, hey, I live near here, it's an interest to me, or I'm in this park, I'd love for this to be, my park. No pressure because of all the other things you do.
Okay.
I'll send it out probably early next week. Everybody can take a look at it and then try and freshen it up for our next meeting. Does that work okay for everybody?
That sounds good. And also keep in mind, like, some of the items that you might see might just be general maintenance. Like, tell us about those as well, because that's
Yeah.
always really helpful for us, because we can't be in every single nook and cranny of every single park all the time. And even though we try to, and we have very long maintenance lists as well of, your general day-to-day maintenance, but if you see things that don't look safe, or there's stuff that needs to be addressed.
I saw something that looked safe over the weekend. The Young Lungs at Play sign post in the play area at the playground,
Which one?
where the swing set is.
Which playground you mean?
Which park?
I'm sorry, I was thinking of it and say Tennell.
okay.
I'm sorry, Tennell.
Tennell?
Yeah,
Take a look at it.
They have signs on the backstops of the ball field,
Yes.
but there's a post with a sign, and I can't recall if it's actually within the wood chip area or just off of it, but it struck me as an odd place for
I'll take a look at it and
sign.
see. Our
My first
sign
concern
department
was
put them up.
safety.
Okay. We don't want the young lungs at sign. Young lungs at
We don't wanna have
sign.
class
How
lungs
ironic
running into
for somebody
signs.
Cause an injury.
Just trying to get me started, aren't you?
I spent some time in Hartford Park with our dogs, and it's also one of my wards. And just things like cleaning up the benches, paint, simple stuff that could be replaced. I mean, is that something that would be capital budget, or that's
No,
something?
that's operating.
That's
just
just
not
operating.
general
Well,
day-to-day.
Well, it's important for us to give our thoughts on that. So when I send out these park
Yeah.
assignments for you all, I'll kind of summarize what we've tried to do in the past
Okay.
with regard to, if you see maintenance items, please point them out. They may already know about them, and it might be on their list, but it might not be, so
Yeah.
that's great. And then secondly, if there's a capital item, et cetera, to point that out, so we'll do that.
I have a question, Tammy, in regards of stewardship for individual parks as we work with these parks, do you have some guidance for us or suggestions for friends of groups? I noticed Ithan Valley is recognized as a friends of group. And if there are neighbors or people who are showing some interest in becoming a friends of group, I've been working with Howard, Bill and I, and a lot of people have worked with some of the neighbors there and starting to form a friends of group. Would you have some guidance for us to how to recognize those groups? Or do we formally apply to be recognized? Or do the neighbors formally apply?
There's really not a formal application process. Those groups have kind of just emerged
Okay.
together.
Okay.
I know at one point there was talk of a Friends of Clement Crone group, but I don't think they really came to fruition
Yeah.
after the park was redone. But we had a Cowan Park group at one point in time, and then they disbanded. And as you know, Friends of Ithan Valley Park is a very big one because they spend a lot of time in the parks and
Right.
do a lot of cleanups. And coordinated efforts there. So as that group emerges,
So just coordinate, help them
coordinate
coordinate
each
it.
other and formalize.
Because as we stewardship, you know,
Mhm.
if we go and look into that park and thinking, you know, couple of these improvements and things, and as people come together as a group, I just wanted to, you know, seek your advice on how to help.
Yeah, I would just say, you know, to maybe create yourself a little bit more formally and maybe come up with a strategy and some goals. Like when we
Well, it
heard
took
from the
us-
Friends of Eichton Valley, like they have a whole master plan.
Great.
But
That they actually
remember,
showed to us
it
many,
took
many
us
years ago with their
10
plan.
years to get that group to form.
Really?
Yeah,
At the Valley?
yeah.
Yeah.
What we did is there were one or two, and then other people started coming in. We got the Conservancy and the Historical Society one year to do things in the park with the historic mill. So it finally coalesced, and it could go away just as easily.
Absolutely, I totally understand
That's
that.
what happened by the Cowan Group. Yeah, and they had built the rain garden that's over there next to the pumping station that's really, you know, no longer maintained.
Kids grow up.
Yeah.
Folks, unfortunately, I have to jump to another commitment. Bill's going to finish with the meeting, and
Thank
Tammy,
you.
thank you for your time, and thank you everybody
Thanks,
for showing up
Chris.
tonight.
Thanks, Chris.
And we'll see you in November.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, thanks, you too.
Tammy, I didn't know if you wanted anything else.
It's not the Eagle sign down.
What's that?
I said, you almost knocked the Eagle sign down.
Bob, one reason we want to
You wouldn't get too upset, would you?
Anything else on this topic, Tammy, that you wanted to raise or want us to discuss, other than what we've hit on already?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a good start.
Does it make sense to go to your report at this point in time, or do you
Sure.
want to hit the old business on the update on the parks projects? Whichever order you prefer is fine with me.
We can go to the old business. I don't know if anyone has any questions on any of the park projects. I tried to highlight them a little bit when I went through the bond projects, because those are really what's underway. If anybody has any questions, otherwise I was going to show some pictures of Bo Connor.
Before we
that'd be
move
great.
there, I have a question.
Sure.
It's almost a ritual about Tanel. How soon do we expect that to be out to bid?
Well, right now we're back and forth with the engineering firm, just trying to tweak the final bid packet.
Okay.
So that, I know our engineer had several comments and questions, so we're trying to work through those. The goal is that we can get that to bid yesterday. So, and we know that the facility is going to potentially be delivered probably mid to late November already at this point. They've given us a timeline for which they can do delivery. And then once we finalize the bid packet, it'll be sent over to the school district as a review and FYI as well.
What do we do with the facility when it's delivered? Where do we put it?
It'll be on a pallet, a large, very large pallet, so it will become a quick obstruction to the parking. So
It's going to be on the parking lot there.
yeah, well, we haven't figured out exactly where
Okay.
we're gonna put it, but that's,
All right.
the thought is it will be strategically located so that it works for the contractor.
Okay. Thank you for.
I know a lot of people have told me, or have asked me, told me, I know they'd like to tell me, they'd like to have it ready for the spring season
That was
and
my
opening
question.
day, and that's the goal. That's all I can
Okay.
say, is that's the goal, and we're trying to move as quickly as possible.
Thanks. Bill, I think you were.
I was going to say, what is the next opportunity to bond, all these outstanding wish lists on the lower, when's the next opportunity to look for a bond for this kind of, you know?
Well, again, it depends.
Mhm.
If the commissioners are willing, we can go out for a new bond tomorrow. But that would
Do you need
require,
that?
it would require a tax increase. We were very fortunate, the bond that we just did, there were retiring bonds so that we were able to borrow 11 million and not increase taxes 1 cent. In fact, that's how we determined how much to borrow, was so that the payments were the same.
Sure.
But that's what it always comes down to.
Is the board refinancing any of their bonds?
I think we've just refinanced the sewer bond, and that, we got some incredibly low rate.
Yeah, we're doing really well
And
with
we've
district
got-
refinancing bonds, that's why.
All the previous ones have been refinanced over the last few years. I mean, it's kind of hard to beat 1-2%.
Yeah.
Yeah. But is there a cyclical nature of,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
what what comes next in
Yep.
the project.
Yep.
But it does, I mean, it does kind of beg the question at a time when it's so inexpensive to borrow money, is this a good time to say, you know what, we really need to get our capital projects back on schedule?
And these things that don't get done,
Right.
10 years from now, we're paying twice, 3
Mhm.
times. Yeah.
Well, that's another problem is collecting the sewers, for example. They haven't been funded properly, and we've ended up each year, this past year, $3 or $4 million in emergency repairs, which always costs 2 to 3 times as much.
Well, I think there's some commissioners that have a philosophy too that we're reactive to when things break, that's when they fix them.
Yeah, there's a couple who think that way. I mean, the funny part, the one Rolls Run sewer, we actually were on top of, and the engineering was done, but it just decided to blow out ahead of schedule. It didn't read the chart.
Can't control all the information.
No,
We try.
we try.
Any more questions for Tammy on the park project updates that we haven't covered? All right.
So
Yes.
I wanted to just show some pictures
Wonderful.
of O'Connor, Philippone. I don't know, I'm sure you guys have driven by from time to time to see what's going on there, but it's not always easy to see in some of the specifics, so I wanted to share some of the photos that we had gathered. So just a little bit of a summary of what's going on. In O'Connor Park, there's the pickleball court installation that's basically rehabilitating the old cement slab and the upper portion of the park up above the basketball courts right along the property line. If you guys remember, back in July of 18, we had a lot of residents who came forward that were very, very energetic and enthusiastic about having that converted to an official pickleball court. And fortunately, it was something we were able to make happen as part of this project. We also have ball field fencing that's going up on all of the baseball fields. The tennis courts are being redone, obviously at Philippone. The parking lot's being redone at Philippone. It's been in very bad shape for a long time. There's a lot of low spots that are being corrected so that they don't hold water any further. The sidewalks are being done all along the park. So it's really just a lot of fabulous things that are happening, and things are really starting to look good there. So this is just sort of like what the entrance area looked like there at O'Connor Park off of Kirsch Avenue. This is what the old cement slab looked like, having it kind of chopped up there. And then the stone base being installed. Rebar put through there. It's like a mesh that gets put down before the concrete goes in. And then the forms for the pickleball area. So this area was actually it was enlarged too, so it was a much smaller area before, but in order to play more formal pickleball on it, we wanted to at least meet the minimums of the U.S. Pickleball Association.
We're
So
going 4 courts there, did you say?
this is just one.
That's one,
Yeah,
okay.
that's
I was
one
thinking 4
court.
courts, we talked about that
It
indoor.
looks so much bigger in the picture.
It really
than
does,
Yeah.
but it's not.
No.
But it just allows for the safe boundaries and all of that go around
So
the
that's just
exterior
one
of the
court?
court. One court.
I think we talked
Pictures
about
were
4 courts in
distorted.
Sulpizio. at one
And we
point.
did have 4 courts.
That's
There
exactly-
are
This
4
is-
courts.
It's
Yeah.
not nearly this big in the real life.
What's
The
that?
picture- The picture really does make it look huge, and it's really,
Looks like a basketball court.
yeah.
He's a very small man.
That's good. That's it.
That's better.
Yeah,
He's
that's
about this
what-
big.
It could have been the picture too. Some of the pictures were taken by the inspectors, and I think they were stretched a little bit too.
It's curved.
So this is the acid
Yeah.
wash of the
Wide
surface.
angle.
This gets done to prep the surface with an acid wash solvent before it's actually painted with the acrylic.
Yeah, it
So
looks
there's the
great.
form complete.
Really great.
This is where they started to put the coloring down.
So
the
you have
reason why
tennis
it's-
court, like a tennis court covering,
it
same type of
is.
thing?
It's an acrylic paint.
Yeah.
So the patch in the center is more just to overlayer in the center area. So it helps to give pitch so that the water doesn't settle in that area.
Mhm.
But I don't have an updated picture beyond that.
That's nice.
So
That's good.
we'll get some of those. That's before the sidewalks being redone that lead out to South Devon Avenue, right at O'Connor. The sidewalks obviously along South Devon Avenue.
Are those signs being replaced as well?
The sign at Beauconnor,
Yeah.
I am having replaced. The
Yeah.
one at Warren Philippone is new. At Warren Philippone, there will be the addition of entrance and exit signs, because prior, there's never been a formal, this is the entrance and this is the exit, so I wanted to formalize that similar to Clemmer-Crone.
So it's gonna be a one-way.
One way in, one
No,
like
I've always
exit.
entered or exited
Yeah.
however I felt.
A lot of people have. When the park's really busy, that's when it gets confusing,
Right.
Like Ditmore,
otherwise.
same
Well,
type
but
of
when the
thing.
park's really busy is when you're like,
Yeah.
oh, everybody else is
And
lined
it's
up down
dusty.
there. I'm gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looks nice.
There's a lot of soccer.
You'll with bigger initial pad, that's right.
You're too late.
Never too late.
The surface pad for the dugout. I think it's dry
All new
now.
benches down there as well.
New benches, yes, new player benches, and the bleachers are gonna be
Last
replaced
year,
too.
we
The
with
field's
process.
regraded.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was that a special group that came in for that, or is that just standard township grading? I know, because I think we had the special group come in from Penn State, the,
Hubbard.
Hubbard, yeah. they
Yeah,
were.
we're working on that now, as a matter of fact, because the fields actually at Warren Philippone and Beauconnor have some very,
Yeah.
very, like, you could be standing 20-30% slope in certain areas where it's very uneven, so
Hubbard was done by.
we're
lasers.
actually working to skin those fields. In
Permanently?
Little League, and I've been permanently, but they're in that bad a shape, they're gonna have to be taken all the way down. So that's sort of like another project, not part of this project, but that we're gonna work on
With Little League.
with Little League, and something we hope to get done before spring,
Okay.
because there's significant safety hazards on those fields.
Yeah.
The backstops. This is the other pad. So there's the pickleball pad that we just looked at in the upper portion, and then over adjacent but parallel to South Devon Avenue, there's another pad that's right
Is
there.
that where the shed is?
Yeah, just below it.
Just behind.
Yes.
Behind here?
Just behind it.
The shed's up there.
So that one we were having
Oh, right, okay.
redone as well. And it's just gonna be colored green. There won't be pickleball striping on there, because it really doesn't meet that minimum as a sizing. But the group will probably still play on it. Be happy that there's another surface to do so. But rather than take it out, we figured we'd just repair it. Basketball court repairs to the surfacing, and then the resurfacing.
2 hoops? Full court.
Yep.
Oh, looks great. It really does make it, I mean, it's so inviting. It really
looks
is.
great. It really
Yeah.
does.
That court gets a ton of.
It
Oh,
does.
Yeah,
It's
and I think now, I mean, it's just, yeah, it's just like.
The tennis courts over at Philippone.
Did we move the courts that we talked about?
We did not.
We did not move them?
It was cost prohibitive.
Okay. To align with baseball cages, we took, that was all?
Yeah, it was very cost prohibitive
Okay.
to do that.
Okay. So they're being resurfaced and re-fenced.
And not to digress, but I know Little League is still looking at the feasibility of that project. For those of you who don't know, there was discussion about the addition of an infield, not field, full field, but like an infield practice field that would potentially sit just to the one side where the batting cages are now at Philippone Park. I guess there was a resident that came forward that wanted to contribute some funding, and Little League was interested in looking at it to see if it was something that was feasible. So they're still having discussions about that, because really, after talking with Little League's priority is really batting cages and like a place for pitchers to warm up, basically.
Yeah.
You know. So I'm not sure if that project's going to come to fruition or not, but the dialogue's still ongoing. So the tennis courts, when they're finally painted, so there's 3 total, which will match what was there previously. Over 2 of the courts, there will be 2 pickleball courts on each court as well, that we were able to fit. So that will make the addition of 4 more courts, overlapping 2 of the 3 tennis courts.
Did you figure out the paint colors? Because apparently there is some
real tennis players have a
Who
problem.
would get really ticked off
No,
about
they're
that?
really,
No, I'm with them.
So that
And
there's.
I'm not a real
Has
tennis
blue.
player. But
It's something about blue and gray and white and I don't know.
They're gonna be the same as Macron, they're gonna be green, a two-tone green.
Okay, so it's
The
been,
white
it's been
lines.
proven at Macron because, okay.
It was yellow.
I know there's a lot of people who like blue and want them to be blue, but there's a lot of people that want them to be green because they also want them to blend in to
Yeah.
their earth tone and the park tone, so you can't please everyone.
No, right, so the courts are actually green.
Green.
Got it,
Okay,
okay.
first come,
So
first
then
served, it's just
the-
where you show up and wait your turn? Or is they, you
Yeah.
book those
You
in
can
advance?
permit them, we do have a process
Yeah.
for permitting them.
But I
We
mean,
usually
on the
try to
weekends, people just show
always-
up and wait their turn?
They
Or
do.
Yeah.
We usually try to have, if somebody who's gonna rent the courts,
Yeah.
or if we were gonna run a program, we try to always have at least one court that's open to the public. Because we do use the courts for a lot of programming.
So I actually thought you were asking a different question, Claire. The lines for the pickleball, are they a different color than the lines for the tennis, at least?
Yes, so
That's
the
what
tennis
I-
lines are
Yeah, that's what
white.
I thought. I didn't think you were asking about blue.
Yeah.
Okay.
The tennis lines are white, and the pickleball is like a bright yellow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
And the white lines for tennis are dominant, so they
Yes.
will not
Yeah.
overlap the
Yeah.
pickleball. So,
Right.
Thank you. Someone will ask.
Oh, let's move to pickleball. I gotta see this game, man.
it's a lot of fun.
Unless you have to play it nice.
So,
Jim.
more of the
Tennis for older
forms.
people.
What's that?
Tennis for older people?
That's what Phil.
Yeah.
Less running.
Younger people with bad knees.
Bad knees and sore ankles?
So it's coming along.
Yeah.
It really is. I hope next
Cool.
month, we'll have an opportunity to, take a little bit of a closer look at that and.
Thank you
O'Connor-
for making that.
Oh, you're
That's great.
welcome.
Yeah, that was-
Have-
Oh, you're
really
welcome.
nice.
No
I've
problem.
I've directed a few people there to look at it,
Okay.
besides the website. 'cause
Has
it's
there
a-
ever been any, I mean, I
Fantastic.
was looking at Capelli Grange, $5,000 for a new sign for Capelli Golf. Has there been any further discussion about making real baseball fields there? There was some talk about that a number of years ago, leveling it out and
That
putting
got-
in,
That died.
they died. I know Cabrini was interested in possibly putting in a legitimate field.
And so was Villanova.
Villanova, yeah.
Really
Rather
discussion
than
for
drive
the next
up
couple of
to
years
Plymouth
was
meeting.
a commissioner coming and making a passion plea to put more money into golf driving range, if I recall
Yeah.
correctly.
Yes,
Right.
we were over there when we had that discussion.
Yes,
Can I
I
ask
remember it
one-
vividly.
Where is that?
Right up the street.
Right across
Crossing
from the
the
Radnor
apartments.
Crossing Apartments.
Oh,
Before you
that
get
big
to
Little
open
field.
field is actually a
Yeah.
driving
Beautiful
range?
scenic.
Informal.
Yeah.
Got
Well,
it.
that was part of St. David's Golf Course.
Yes.
Many years ago.
Okay.
There's a sand trap out there someplace in an old green.
Towards the trail.
Yeah.
So I couldn't go up to it. How was the festival last weekend?
It was fantastic. It really was. It was,
I'm so disappointed.
I was
beautiful
disappointed.
day. It was a beautiful day.
Yeah.
It was cooler. It's not as hot as it had been in previous years.
I was scared to go over because, I mean, don't come by, there's gonna be 4,000 people and parking is prohibitive.
I will say that so this was the 8th year of the event, so it's
Yeah.
been going on for quite a while. This was probably one of our lighter attended years. I think, so we're able to calculate the number of cars. We actually have numeric clickers
Yeah.
that we give to the CPAs, our Citizens Police Academy folks who control all the parking. And mathematically, we probably had about 3,000, 3,500 is what we dubbed.
Wow.
So still a lot, not the 4,000 and 5,000 that we've had in back years, but it still was significantly attended. And one of the things we tried to do differently this year was to take a pre-registration for the large pumpkins, like that size right there. That's literally one that was left over that we bring back here. Not that one right over there. And the pre-registration, we screened it for residents only, which was fantastic, and it worked out really well. So in years prior, we would run out of pumpkins pretty early. People would come and they'd, walk off with tons of pumpkins, and we really controlled it and regulated it much better this year, and it seemed to work well. People were happy, residents were happy, so it was a really good event.
We wanted those numbers to go down
We
anyway.
did.
For all the
It's a
reasons.
good problem to have, but the problem is when you're giving out free pumpkins and the number keeps growing because the amount of non-residents
Correct.
hear free pumpkins and they're coming in, we can't afford to just keep buying more pumpkins and buying more pumpkins. One of the great things about the event is we have a ton of sponsors. As a matter of fact, Mainline Health jumped on a 3-year agreement this year. We actually had a few newcomers too, like Solid Wood Cabinets in Wayne, Fair and Electric, and Metropolitan Veterinarian Services. So they were some big sponsors that we had for the event this year that helped us afford it. Basically defraying all of the costs and cover all of the direct costs, which is fantastic. But you can only keep purchasing so much, and you can't be the region's pumpkin supplier.
Yeah.
So it worked out much better.
Can you ask about Sulpizio?
You can. Do I have the answer?
I just thought, like, we still have bumps in the floors and holes in the ceiling, or?
We, at this point, the township had committed to the township, or to the district, that we're going to terminate the lease. So right now, the facility
No.
basically.
No, wait a minute.
You can't commit to that.
We told them that it was a consideration, it's not that.
We haven't formally terminated the lease, but originally that was our intent.
So it may go back to the school district?
But-
There's not an option for the township to terminate the lease.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So it's up to the district to
How about the
consider
status
that.
of the building itself?
It's not,
It's not
Contractor?
in terrible condition.
Contractor bowing out?
What contractor?
Or
It's
is
not
it
the
the
floors that are in terrible shape.
floors-
It's the
Floor's in
locker
bad shape
rooms.
also.
Yeah.
The roof and the locker rooms are in really bad shape.
Floor's in bad shape as well.
The
Floor's
staff is
just fine
working with
according to
the
our
school
staff.
district staff, and we're trying to get a much better handle on the extent of injury, if you will.
Basketball
And-
season's coming up soon again,
Right,
so.
and it won't be ready
Won't
for
be
that,
ready.
I don't
Won't be
think.
there.
But one of the things I've suggested to a couple of the guys in the athletic association is that they should do a petition drive and get it on the ballot.
Get what on the ballot?
Repairs and restoration of the building with some dollar figure. So, because then it is electoral debt, where the people have approved the debt.
What's the athletic association?
Yeah.
Like there are a couple of the different guys I know from years and the different teams.
Okay.
So it's a work in progress,
There's
is the short of
significant
it.
ground infiltration.
Don't answer.
Not according to Mark Brooks.
I won't answer.
According to the studies that were done.
Sorry.
And he has different engineering opinions, I think, is what I understand.
Everybody was located in a significant area. Water infiltration.
I don't wanna have the argument here.
No, that's fine.
I know, but I'm just
want
saying.
to make sure
like-
the district just takes care of it, that's all, in a sense,
Well,
that just to be
Yeah, but
mindful.
the township has the contractual obligation to maintain that building.
Oh, great, so nothing's gonna get done. We sit empty.
So
Cost of
we're looking at the potential for willows, just something sitting there for a long time.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
good.
No.
because the district owns the building, we're not gonna probably let that happen, but.
And I assume at some point there should be a discussion whether or not it's cost effective just to start from scratch or not.
Yes.
Well, and arguably in a different location.
That is,
That was a lake
on a lake.
one time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was the commitment the township really made to the district, was that, we'll work through the process to determine the fate of the facility in the future. But I'm not aware that the township is not able to get out of the lease. I don't think legally there's a lease you can't get out of, so to speak.
Well, I've read it.
At least according to our solicitor.
Yeah.
Okay, we accept it.
Yeah, there's
All
a
right, are we
disagreement.
public
there.
comment? Yeah, are we out of here?
I don't know if Tammy's done her report
We've done public
Yeah.
participation.
and Commissioner's report as well. But
No.
were you done with your report?
I'm good, yes.
Okay. Commissioner Nagel, anything from the Board of Commissioners?
Not from the rest of the board, but.
Did you have something to say?
Well, I've only got 2 months left, so. And,
So let her rip, John.
well, no, our solicitor's already told me that he wants to review anything I want to send. No, I'm just very proud of what we've been able, not me,
Yes.
we've been able to accomplish over the last 10 years. And even before that, we had gotten some momentum. We did more. That was a Parks Board was a very significant player in that. The reconfiguration of Emlyn Tunnel, because it used to be terrible the way it was laid out. And putting in walking paths at every park so people could get their exercise in. All these capital projects, which just had, I mean, the whole time I was on the Parks Board, every year we would go to the commissioners' meetings because that was the first thing that got chopped out of the budget. And any of you that know what our parks were like 30 years ago compared to now, you know, they're much less than they used to be. You know, Willows is probably one of the prime examples. But parks are great. You know, right after the school district, the second reason people moved to Radnor is for services, which includes the parks and everything else. So. And the trails are moving along. We didn't get that grant.
I just heard that. We'll try to get on the call, and it was, yeah.
The grant for the extension of the.
No,
different
this,
grant.
well, this was, we apply for every grant in the world because the idea is OPM, right?
Right.
Other people's money. And this was another one they had just come out with. And Bob Thomas is riding to some meeting with somebody high up in SEPTA. So he's going to be working on the rails with trails, rails and trails concept, which favors, if you're familiar with it, the Forge to Refuge Trail, which the Radnor Trail's a piece of.
So Sarah, you're right. It's the extension over Radnor Chester is what.
The extension over Radnor Chester
Yeah,
that's
that's-
supposed to
yeah,
go
it was
around
a-
the high school. That's
different.
That's
That's
the
different.
that
Okay,
one's-
that's what I'm
that's
asking.
fully funded.
okay.
So we were going after some additional for the Radnor Trail extension, which is another 1.5 miles, 2 miles. But right now we have 4 trail projects, 3 of which are moving. Of course, Darby Paoli is lagging, but we just awarded a contract for some additional work over there. So
For finding grants.
yeah, for finding grants. So that, I mean, that's wonderful. And last week I was driving along Darby Paoli Road and Black Angus were out there in the field. I stopped and took a picture and sent it to Elaine.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was, I mean, that was a hard-fought fight. And it's beautiful.
I highly recommend reading that book, The Beneficiary,
Yeah.
which
She's going to be in town end of the month.
she was.
Well, she was just at Bryn Mawr
Yeah, the
Films.
library.
Yeah.
It's really worth it for any person who loves
Just-
Radnor.
Yeah, and you just need that background, that historical background. I mean,
On Ardrossan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you think you might, know it all, and there's.
So
and
true.
you don't.
No, no, no.
You don't.
The dirt.
So
Yeah.
worth it to.
It's a well-written book.
I mean, what
Well, she
a
was
what
a
a
journalist.
township.
Yeah,
we
she's
live
a
in.
good writer.
Really.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Nagel. Claire, anything from Shade Tree?
Oh, I already shared it, so thank you.
Fair enough.
Yes, we're all good there.
Before I open for public participation, any other board members have any new business, anything to add, anything to get off their chest, et cetera? Okay. All right. Public participation.
I'm the only one here. For those who don't know me, I'm Laura Luker from the Radnor Conservancy. And I'm just here actually just to keep up on what's happening. I do this for Shade Tree as well and EAC. I guess the biggest thing is if you do propose something to the Board of Commissioners, which I definitely think is a great thing for the budget, it is really imperative that they understand that the longer they wait on a project, the more expensive it gets, as you mentioned. And these projects, they have to continue to be done. And the other piece that I'm always trying to push, but it doesn't necessarily, I don't think, come under Parks and Rec's budget, but is the parks have a whole periphery, a perimeter, and within the park, it's not just hardscape. It's actually the forestry of it all. As Claire mentioned, trees are are somewhat on the budget, but there's maintenance of those trees and their future of them. And some of the grounds also get grown and things like that. So there's money that needs to be put aside for maintenance, and that's a hard sell. But and I think the last thing I wanted to say, we talked about the friends groups. Friends groups are really challenging. Ideally, it would be so great that every park have a friends group. They almost have to become a 501c3 because they come and go as somebody's able to give their 3 years or whatever. So it's really hard. The Iden Valley one is very unusual. Peter Kingsbury, Roy Perry, they're dedicated people. It's really hard to get these groups to be established and stay. So it really does fall back onto Parks and Rec or the Township. Radnor does not like to do things kind of do it yourself. They want somebody else to do it for them. It's kind of like how many people really cut their lawn. Not many. They always yeah, little
My
Mary.
lawnmower's back there.
There you go. And it's too bad that we don't fund more of this. I'm actually a proponent of raising taxes to be able to get where we need to be. So, being said that, I hope that they listen to you, because these are projects that have been pushed year after year, and Tammy has done an amazing job of putting these new features in and getting things done. So, and we all do need to talk together.
Yeah.
There's absolutely right. Too many silos. We need to all work. Hopefully there will be a meeting with Shade Tree and some Board of Commissioners in regards to maintenance of maintaining the trees in the right-of-ways and
I've requested that they give us a presentation again.
and I think it also needs to be included, hopefully Chris will hear this and we might remember to tell him that we would love to have representatives of this group too, because it's really imperative that these all cross over together. Shade Tree, Parks and Rec, EAC, things like that.
We are making strides, though. We now have 2 commissioners that sit on Shade
Yes.
Tree. Just so John you've been sitting on this one, and it's really helpful to have a commissioner. And then
Yeah.
we also have Trish, who, Tammy, you really help us coordinate all these ideas and things. So there is progress on Shade Tree, and I do think we can try to dovetail that. It's really important. Sorry, Laura, I didn't mean to
No,
take up
that's really all, yeah.
Thank you very much. I think the Conservancy's done a great job, especially, I can speak personally, for drawing the invasive vine issue to the forefront and continue to push that. And I know we all are appreciative of you drawing those things to our attention, to put
Yeah.
them in front of us so we don't lose sight of them in
Yeah.
the hardscape and the other things we're all trying to do here. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tammy. Thank